This is the 7th day of the November '89 7-day retreat at Springwater. Several questions were left over from yesterday. And one person asked, couldn't you address those rather than reading today? But then I also know that there are people, including myself, who would like to have a break from hearing the same person 6 days in a row. Hear someone else talk. So maybe we can have a combination of all of it. The 3 questions that I picked out that were left yesterday were the one about, I'm trying to decide what to do with my life, what work to do. It's clear that I need to work to earn a living, as we say. But is there really any freedom of choice? That was the first question. And we won't go into all the depths and ramifications of it, but look at it rather briefly. We can pick it up again. There'll be another retreat in 3 weeks. And questions are not limited to retreats. We'll have time to talk with each other over longer periods of time during the coming 3 weeks. Discussion periods and so forth. Several of us in meetings who are concerned with this question have looked at this question, not just one time, but picked it up again in another meeting. This whole question of what this freedom to choose is, freedom to choose a job, what one likes to do. And isn't it every time that there is the choice or the feeling, I'm free to choose what I will do, isn't it always based on what I would like to do, depending on what I have enjoyed or been good at in the past? What people have told me I was good at, or what I have done that has brought rewards or recognition, approval from others, including myself. My own approval, what is it conditioned by? My own approval of myself. How much is it played into by the approval of others from the past? It's really, if one looks at it, it's the self that has the freedom, or the imagined freedom to choose, according to, and self here we mean the whole accumulation of our past conditioning, programming, learning, education, including our internal drives, needs, wants, which are also conditioned by the way we grew up, what we saw around us, experienced around and within us. Out of that comes the freedom to choose what is most rewarding, or what we think will be most rewarding and least unrewarding, least displeasurable. Whether what we imagined will be rewarding will actually be so depends again on lots of things that we cannot really predict. But we feel we have the freedom of choice according to what we like or dislike, which is conditioned. I'm not making assertions and proclamations, and it's for each one of us to grapple with this, look into it, question it very honestly, open it up as we go. And we're asking whether there is a doing which is not the freedom of the self, but the freedom from the self. A doing coming out of seeing, listening this moment, and finding in that what needs to be done, what's right before us, which may be rewarding or not rewarding, but there is the seeing that it needs doing. A doing that doesn't have that same freedom of choice. Will I like it? Will it be pleasurable? Or will it, whatever, all these considerations we have and vacillations, preferences. But it has a different quality of freedom to it. The freedom of no vacillation. Is there such a doing? That does not have the pain and pleasure of choice? We're asking that. It's for each one of us to find out. The next question was, at times it is hard for me to distinguish whether the sadness I feel is my own or the sadness of other people around me. And the question, somewhat similar to this one, was, is there a way of being compassionate, really? In the midst of, say, a ward of AIDS patients, being with them, taking care of them, without being totally sucked into their suffering. Identified with it. This is a very common experience for people who are looking meditatively into themselves. And by meditatively, I mean not just thinking and analyzing, but looking from moment to moment what is unfolding. And in coming upon, say, sadness, deep sadness within oneself. Maybe first it was anger that one felt, and then there revealed itself fear underneath the anger, and then sometimes people say all that's left is a deep sadness. And in being with that, not withdrawing or concluding or escaping or rationalizing, then comes this feeling of in touchness with sadness, not just of one's personal kind, but sadness of human beings around us who represent all human beings in this world, past and present, who have lived in so much sadness. There is no dividing line, no distinct dividing line between my personal sadness and that of others. It's the same sadness, the same fear, the same anger, sorrow that is felt individually or collectively meaning by many human beings. And can it be felt in that way? Sort of transcending, as it were, the personal, to participate in the general, with a growing understanding of what brings about sadness in us. And that, again, not theoretically rationalizing about it, but watching it. Often it's the sadness about how we live in so much ignorance or unawareness, hurting others, or being hurt by others who may not mean to hurt us or want to hurt us. But where does that wanting to hurt us come from? Not to stop short at one step, but to go all the way. Why would anybody want to hurt anyone else? If there wasn't a residue of something pushing toward retaliation or hurting someone. So the person feels how I feel when he hurt me or she hurt me. All of this not necessarily going on rationally. These are unconscious machinations of the mind, which can be lit up through insight. I think it's only when there is the feeling of sorrow in others and how it comes about, by understanding how it comes about in oneself through clinging and attachment, not letting go of memory, wanting what is not within reach, and when one has reached it, wanting more or something different, because it pales and one becomes accustomed to it. Deep nagging discontent which never is fulfilled. When one understands the suffering, the sadness, which is also the identification with a sufferer of the suffering, oneself being a victim. Why should this have happened to me? This outcry of millennia. Why me? Every human being cries out like this at one time or another, or many times. Can there be an insight into this me that's suffering? What is it? Who is the sufferer, the endurer? Or is there just sadness when it arises at a thought, at a reflection, at looking at oneself and others? It arises. But it need not be suffered. It can be felt as it is and understood as it is so often sustained. We hold on to our sadnesses, to our suffering, as a content of our life with which we can identify, which makes us into something. Again, the dread of not having any identity, nothing to cling to. And the dread because there's an idea that this would be dreadful. It's not based on the directness of there not being anyone in the middle of this vast, wondrous universe of wind and sun and clouds, brightness and darkness. So it's a very pertinent and question to say, can I be with people who are suffering? I want to alleviate suffering. I want to be with people who have the AIDS disease and care for them, because there are so few people to care for them. I want to do that, and I'm doing it. But I feel often devastated by their suffering. Actually, in reading and hearing accounts of people who have AIDS, and we're just using that, it goes for all suffering of disease or sickness or disability. There often emerges in a human being a new way of looking at the disease, which is probably the absence of the sufferer, the absence of the me in the middle of what is going on, and therefore a freshness, a light, which is energy that is intelligent and compassionate, and yet not reveling in suffering. So, as one works with people who are dying, can there be the closeness? Closeness isn't even the right word, because it implies me close to you. Can there just be seeing and what's there, touching it, listening to it, and allow action to come out of that? What we were talking before, without choosing, not knowing how to act, allowing the situation to generate right action, compassionate action, not the action of pity. Having pity always comes from me. I have pity for you. And I feel in that a separateness. And I don't like really having to feel sorry for you. It's disagreeable very often. One doesn't want the other to suffer because one doesn't want to suffer oneself in the sight of someone who's suffering. It's only when this whole concern and about oneself in it is absent, is quiet, and there's just what is, including oneself there, then can there be this action which comes out of nowhere, special, which comes quite naturally maybe, in the presence of people who may not be suffering the way I thought they are, now that I'm listening freshly, not with my ideas about suffering and the badness of illness and disease. Badness in quotation marks. I've just picked 3 passages from Huang Po, from the Zen teaching of Huang Po, translated by John Blofeld. I've left some words, sentences out, or changed some words which come maybe from Buddhist terminology, although the word Buddha is used here by Huang Po not as the historical person or a religious symbol. Well, it is a religious symbol if he uses it for the wholeness a word for the wholeness, the truth of the whole universe. Without self, without interpretation of self. Collected by his disciple, these sayings and little sermons. We won't read the dialogue today. The Master said to me, all the Buddhas and all the sentient beings are nothing but the one mind. Buddhas here refers to enlightened beings. He doesn't say what they are. In the Buddhist community, there is belief that there are many enlightened beings, visible or invisible. All the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but the one mind. Translator here capitalizes it with a capital O and capital M, beside which nothing exists. This mind, which is without beginning, is unborn and indestructible. It is not green or yellow, and has neither form nor appearance. It does not belong to the categories of things which exist or do not exist, nor can it be thought of in terms of young or old. Now, there is no time concept involved, no formal concept to be attached to it, to describe it. Can one be in a state of listening with no time concept, not seeking for any kind of form? And yet he's saying something, he's formulating something, but it need not become a dogma, something rigid, adhered to, believed in, just to listen to it openly, like to the wind in the trees and window. It is neither long nor short, big or small, for it transcends all limits, measures, names, traces, and comparisons. It is that which you see before you. Begin to reason about it, and you at once fall into error. It is like the boundless void which cannot be fathomed or measured. The one mind alone is the Buddha, and there's no distinction between the Buddha and sentient beings, but that sentient beings are attached to forms and seek externally for Buddhahood or salvation or enlightenment or whatever our terms are for a state beyond the self or out of suffering, maybe, beyond suffering. By their very seeking they lose it, for that is using mind to grasp mind. Even though they do their utmost for a full eon, they will not be able to attain to it. People do not know that if they put a stop to conceptual thought and forget their anxiety, the Buddha will appear before them. For this mind is the Buddha, and Buddha is all living beings. It is not less for being manifested in ordinary beings, nor is it greater for being manifested in the Buddhas. Mind is like the void in which there's no confusion or evil, as when the sun wheels through it, shining upon the four corners of the world. For when the sun rises and illumines the whole earth,
the void gains not in brilliance, and when the sun sets, the void does not darken. The phenomena of light and dark alternate with each other, but the nature of the void remains unchanged. So it is with the mind. If you look upon the Buddha as presenting a pure, bright, or enlightened appearance, or upon sentient beings as presenting a foul, dark, or mortal-seeming appearance, these conceptions resulting from attachment to form will keep you from supreme knowledge, even after passing of as many eons as there are sands in the Ganges. There's only the one mind, and not a particle of anything else on which to lay hold. If you students of the way do not awake to this mind, you will overlay mind with conceptual thought. You will seek the truth outside yourselves, and you will remain attached to forms, pious practices, and so on, all of which are harmful and not at all a way to supreme knowledge. Knowledge, of course, the word here, we don't know what the Chinese word was, is not intellectual knowledge. When a sudden flash of thought occurs in your mind, and you see it for a dream or an illusion, then you can enter into the state reached by the Buddhas of the past. Not that the Buddhas of the past really exist, or that the Buddhas of the future have not yet come into existence. Above all, have no longing to become a future Buddha, which means an enlightened being, or perfect, complete, whole, whatever. Your sole concern should be, as thought succeeds thought, to avoid clinging to any of them. Nor may you entertain the least ambition to be a Buddha here and now. Even if a Buddha arises, do not think of him as enlightened or deluded, good or evil. Hasten to rid yourself of any desire to cling to him. Cut him off in the twinkling of an eye. It refers to anything we attach to. Brings us hope, comfort, identification with something else, large or bigger, more holy or whatever than oneself. On no account seek to hold him fast, for 1,000 locks could not stay him, nor 100,000 feet of rope bind him. I will now make luminously clear how to set about being rid of that Buddha. Consider sunlight. You may say it is near, yet if you follow it from world to world, you will never catch it in your hands. Then you may describe it as far away and low. You will see it just before your eyes. Follow it and behold it escapes you. Run from it and it follows you close. You can neither possess it or have done with it, nor have done with it. From this example you can understand how it is with the true nature of all things, and henceforth there will be no need to grieve or to worry about such things. For 2 times I've read parts of a discussion that took place in Ojai, California. Several people, maybe 20 or so, small Krishnamurti talks with a small group of at Ojai, drawn from the Krishnamurti schools and foundations in England, Canada, India, and USA. It's not the whole dialogue, which is a very, very interesting one. People can read it on their own. It may be, I've often wondered when I read it the 2 times whether it was tiring, but the responses of people that have talked to me it was not tiring at all. It was a very wonderful thing to listen to and follow. Go with. So here it is. The questioners are not named, they're just named Q. Can we discuss the relation between Krishnamurti's teaching and truth? Another questioner says, is there such a thing as a teaching at all, or is there only truth? Krishnamurti says, is it the expression of truth? Is the teaching the expression of truth? There are 2 things involved. The speaker is either talking out of the silence of truth, or he is talking out of the noise of an illusion, which he considers to be the truth. Questioner, that is what most people do. Krishnamurti, so which is it that he is doing? Questioner, there could be a confusion between the word and truth. Okay, no, the word is not the truth. That's why we said either he is talking out of the silence of truth or out of the noise of an illusion. Questioner, but because one feels that he is speaking out of the silence of truth, there is a greater possibility for the word to be taken as the truth. Okay, no, let's go slowly, for this is interesting. Who is going to judge? Who is going to see the truth of the matter? The listener? The reader? You who know Indian scriptures, Buddhism, the Upanishads, etc., you're familiar with them and know most of the contents of all of that. Are you capable of judging? How shall we find out? You hear him talking about these things, and you wonder if he's really speaking out of this extraordinary silence of truth, or as a reaction and from a conditioned childhood and so on. It is to say, either he is talking out of his conditioning or out of the other. How will you find out? How will you approach this problem? Questioner says, is it possible for me to find out if what is meeting that teaching? Is it possible for me to find out if what is meeting that teaching is the noise within myself? Okay, that's why I'm asking you. What is the criterion, the measure that you apply as you can say, yes, that is it, or do you say, I don't know? I'm asking what you do. Or don't you know, but are examining, investigating, not whether he's speaking out of silence or out of conditioning, but are you watching the truth of what he is saying? I would want to know whether he was speaking out of this or out of that. But as I don't know, I'm going to listen to what he is saying and see if it is true. Questioner, but what sees it as true? Okay. Say one is fairly alive to things. One listens to this man and one wants to find out whether what he says is mere words or the truth. Questioner, when I have come to the conclusion that it is the truth, then I'm already not listening. Okay, no, I don't know. My life is concerned with this problem, not just for a few years or for a few days. I want to know the truth of this matter. Is he speaking out of experience or from knowledge, or not out of any of these things? Most people speak out of knowledge, so we're asking that question. I don't know how you would find out. I'll tell you what I would do. I would put his personality, his influence, all of that completely aside, because I don't want to be influenced. I'm skeptical, doubtful, so I'm very careful. I listen to him and I don't say I know or I don't know, but I'm skeptical. I want to find out. Person says, skeptical means you're inclined to doubt it, which is already a bias. Okay, oh no. I'm skeptical in the sense that I don't accept everything that is being said. Questioner, but you lean towards doubting. It's negation. Okay, oh no. I would rather use the word doubt in the sense of questioning. Let's put it that way. I say to myself, am I questioning out of my prejudice? This question has never been put to me before. I'm just exploring it. I would put everything aside. All the personal reputation, charm, looks, this and that. I'm not going to accept or reject. I'm going to listen to find out. Am I prejudiced? Am I listening to him with all the knowledge I've gathered about religion, of what the books have said, of what other people have said, of what my own experience tells me? Questioner, no. I may be listening to him precisely because I have rejected all of that. Okay, have I rejected it? Or am I listening to him with all of that? If I have rejected that, then I'm listening. Then I'm listening very carefully to what he has to say. Questioner says, or am I listening with everything that I already know of him? Okay, I have said, I've put away his reputation. Am I listening to him with the knowledge that I have acquired through books, through experience, and therefore I'm comparing, judging, evaluating? Then I can't find out whether what he is saying is the truth. But is it possible for me to put aside all that? I'm passionately interested to find out. So for the time being, while I'm listening at least, I will put aside everything that I've known. Then I proceed. I want to know. But I'm not going to be easily persuaded, pulled into something by argument, cleverness, logic. Now, am I capable of listening to what he is saying with complete abandonment of the past? It comes to that. Are you? Then my relationship with him is entirely different. Then I'm listening out of silence. This is really a very interesting question. I've answered it for myself. There are a dozen of us here. How would you answer it? How do you know that what he is saying about, talking about, is the truth? Now we're skipping some. And later he says, Dr. Bohm and I had a discussion of this kind in a different way. If I remember rightly, we said, is there such a silence which is not the word, which is not imagined or induced? Is there such a silence, and is it possible to speak out of that silence? Questioner. The question was whether the words are coming from perception, from the silence, or from memory. Yes, says Kay. Questioner. The question is whether the words that are used are communicating directly and are coming out of emptiness, out of the silence or not. Okay, that is the real question. Questioner says, as we used to say, like the drum which vibrates to the emptiness within. Okay.
Okay, yes. Now we skip something again. Somebody says, can we say that truth is in the silence out of which the teaching comes? That truth is in the silence out of which the teaching comes? Okay, but I want to know how the silence comes. I might invent it. I might have worked to have a silent mind for years, conditioned it, kept it in a cage, and then say, marvelous, I'm silent. There is that danger. Logic is a danger. Thought is a danger. So I see all the dangers around me. I'm caught in all these dangers, and I want to find out if what that man is saying is the truth. The questioner says, I think there's no way or procedure to find that out. There is no prescription. I cannot tell anybody how to find out. I can say that I felt it with all my being, that something is true, and maybe I can convey it through my life. But I cannot convince anybody through words or reason or by any method. And in the same way, I cannot convince myself. Here, Kay says, Dr. Bohm is a scientist, a physicist, he's clear-thinking, logical. Suppose someone goes to him and asks, is what Krishnamurti says the truth? How is he going to answer? And the questioner says, doesn't Dr. Bohm or anybody have to go beyond the limitations of logic? Kay says, somebody comes to him and asks, tell me, I really want to know from you, please tell me if that man is speaking the truth. The questioner says, but you're then saying use the instrument of logic to find out. Kay says, no, I'm very interested because I've heard so many people who are illogical and careless say he is speaking the truth. But I go to a serious thinker, careful with the use of words, and ask, please tell me if he's telling the truth, not some crooked thing covered up. How is he going to answer me? And somebody says, but then why should I go to Dr. Bohm, much as I respect him? Later Kay says, no, please be simple with me. I want to know if Krishnamurti is speaking the truth. Dr. Bohm has known Krishnamurti for several years. He has a good trained mind, so I go to him and ask him. Somebody says, all he can say is, I know this man. This is how he affects me. He has changed my life. And suddenly a note may be struck in the other one. Kay says, no, I want it straight from the horse's mouth. So somebody says, Dr. Bohm is here. Let him tell us. Now, question which probably Bohm says, I think I would say to him that when we did discuss these things, it was from the emptiness, and that I felt it was a direct perception. And Kay says, yes. Is direct perception unrelated to logic? Bohm says it was from direct perception. Kay asks, is direct perception unrelated to logic, logical thinking? And he says it doesn't come from logic. Kay says, but you are logical all the time, all the same. And he says, that may come later, not at that moment. And Kay says, so you are telling me I have found out that man is telling the truth because I had a direct perception, an insight into what he is saying. Yes, says the question. Kay says, now be careful, because I've heard a disciple of some guru saying exactly the same thing. The questioner says, I've also heard a guru say this,
But a little later, by looking at it logically, I saw the thing was nonsense. When I was looking at the fact and the logic, I saw that it did not fit. So I would say that in addition to direct perception, I have constantly examined this logically. Kay says, so you're saying that perception has not blinded you, and with that perception goes logic also. He says, yes, logic and fact. Kay says, so perception first, then logic, not first logic and then perception. And he says, yes, that is what it always has to be. And Kay says, so through perception and then with logic, you see that it is the truth. Hasn't this been done by the devout Christians? Questioner says, logic is not enough because we have to see how people actually behave as well. I see that Christians say certain things, but when we look at the whole of what they do, it doesn't fit. Okay, isn't there a terrible danger in this? Questioner says, I'm sure there is danger, a danger. Kay says, so you are now saying that one has to walk in danger. And he says, yes. Okay, now I begin to understand what you're saying. One has to move in a field which is full of danger, full of snakes and pitfalls. And the questioner says, which means one has to be tremendously awake. Kay says, so I have learned from talking to him that this is a very dangerous thing. He has said, you can only understand whether Krishnamurti is speaking the truth if you're really prepared to walk in a field which is full of pitfalls. Is that right? Yes. It is a field which is full of mines, a razor's edge path. Are you prepared to do that? One's whole being says, be secure. Questioner says, that is the only way to do anything. Okay. I have learned to be aware of the dangers around me and also to face danger all the time, and therefore to have no security. The inquirer might say, that is too much, and go away. So this is what I want to get at. Can the mind, which has been conditioned for centuries to be secure, abandon that and say, I will walk into danger? That's what we're saying. It is logical, but in a sense it is illogical. Now, questioner says, in principle, that is the way all science works. Okay, yes, that is right. So it also means I don't trust anybody, any guru, any prophet. I trust my wife because she loves me and I love her, but that is irrelevant. Questioner says, the word danger has to be explained too. From one point it is dangerous and from another it isn't. I have to investigate. My conditioning is very dangerous. Okay, so we are saying, I've walked in danger and I have found the logic of this danger. Through the perception of the danger, I have found the truth of what Krishnamurti is saying. And there's no security, no safety in this. Whereas all the others give me safety. Questioner says, security becomes the ultimate danger. Okay, of course. Questioner, what you have described is actually the scientific approach. They say every statement must be in danger of being false. It has been put that way. Okay, that is perfectly right. I've learned a lot. Have you?
we will end here for today.